Ladies and gentlemen, this is Dak Xavier Josiah, the host of A.C.M.G. Presents Talk Time Live, the podcast. You want to catch up with all of our podcast shows and hear from some of the hottest names in all of anime, comics, movies, and games, such as...
This is Miley Flanagan, the voice of Naruto.
This is Stephanie Shea, the voice of Sailor Moon.
This is Ruben Langdon, voice of Ken Masters and Dante from Devil May Cry.
Hey there, this is Kyle Hebert, the voice of Ryu from Street Fighter V.
This is Chris Battle, character designer of Teen Titans Go.
Here's your chance to check out all of that and more on TalkTimeLive.com. TalkTimeLive.com provides all of our ACMG content with new and previous episodes, exclusive interviews, articles, and much more. Visit TalkTimeLive.com and let us help you learn to let go, live life, and love all things ACMG.
Talk Time Live.
Hey, this is Jeff Thorne. I am the writer, producer, showrunner of the Avengers Black Panther's Quest TV series, and you are listening to ACMG Presents Talk Time Live.
It's time for your Talk Time Live exclusive.
You are now about to witness the strength of geek knowledge.
Ladies and gentlemen, on the show right now was my next guest on Talk Time Live exclusive. He is a fellow Philadelphian and an award-winning artist and educator who true superpower to me is helping the youth recognize their power and worth through visual narrative. Something I and probably a lot of people in our community wish we had as well. You may have seen his work on Jeffrey Canada's Fist, Stick, Knife, Gun, A Personal History of Violence, Detective Boogaloo, Hip Hop Cops, which I don't understand why people don't think that's a real thing. And he is the Dwayne Mcduffie recipient award winner of the graphic novel Leon, Protector of the Playground. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Jamar Nicholas to the show. Jamar, how you doing?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on.
Not a problem. It's a pleasure to have you. It was great getting a chance to meet you at Keystone and such. So I had to talk to you once we got into the swing of things and then, the panel and everything. So I've been looking forward to talking to you because it seemed like somebody that I can really pick your brain with, and we could get down on some really fun stuff and some educational stuff for the community. Sure.
Well, yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready to rock.
So, are you still in Philly, or did you move out of Philly?
I'm on the outskirts. Like I live in right outside of Oak Lane. So I'm right at the northern end of Philly.
So you're talking Montgomery County region, pretty much almost.
Yeah, kind of I'm a little Shelton-hammy.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm a little big country.
Don't beat around the bush. That's where it is.
Yeah, I've lived all over Philly. My family's from West Philly. Yeah. My family's from 50th and Race.
Oh.
And you know what's up. And since then I've never really left the city, but I lived for most of my life in Germantown and Mount Airy and Oak Lane. So I just kind of moved a little bit over the city limits, but I'm still around, kind of like how Batman comes out off Fairmount Park somewhere into Gotham. So I'm close.
Well, yeah, because I'm talking to you from University City right now.
Yeah.
So, but I also been around the world in Philadelphia before I hit West Philly, Winfield, end up right back to this area, and this is where I really became homegrown.
Yeah, it's funny how Philly kind of goes through those cycles, right? When I was coming up in the 70s in West Philly, and people were trying to get out of there, and now people are trying to get into there.
Oh God, you should see what it looks like around in University City. My wife and I lived around here for over a decade, maybe 14 years since we've been married, 2005. I swear to goodness, it just came right from under me how gentrified this area has become.
Yeah. When I talked to some white kids that I know, or just young people, and they're like, "Oh, we live up on Baltimore Ave." I'm like, "What?" I was like, "Okay, I just got to blink a lot and go, okay, go do you."
Yeah, right.
Yeah. The whole thing has changed, man. I don't know. I like to tell people that the Philly that I grew up in, I think we may be a little bit around the same age.
Yeah,
was like Trading Places in Murphy, Philly.
Yes,
where
it was.
Everything was just dirty. Everything just had a layer of grime over it.
It's funny that you said that too, because when I did the Overwatch panel at Keystone, and my guests who are from the West Coast were saying how beautiful Philly was, and you know how it is. They only hit the tourist spot.
They went to Pats, right?
Yeah, no. You know what? We had that discussion. They kind of did somewhat just as bad. One of them went to Jim's.
Yeah.
So I was like, if you would have met beforehand, I would have told you where to go. So.
I know. I love the cheesesteak conversation. That's always a good one.
It is. It's like you make one. It's like the Temple of Doom situation with the goblet. If you choose wrong,
you chose poorly.
Exactly. So yeah, I mean, you got to love this area. You got to love it. Yeah. But they were talking about how clean it was, and I'm just looking at the crowd, and I know some of them from Philly, and I was just waving my head like, no, just quite like,
no. Let's just keep. Let's move along.
It's very pristine here.
Just talking about that, about how like so many things have changed. Like the Met has just been open for maybe almost 8 months now, almost a year, and the Divine Lorraine are going to be like condos and all of that. And I remember saying I saw some people come out of limo with fur coats on going into some high school restaurant right underneath Ben Franklin High. I'm like, what? Well, I'm trying to understand.
You're trying to assimilate and adjust.
I'm like, I got chased through there all through the 90s. What are you talking? All right. Anyway, let's move on.
Exactly. I mean, it can be, honestly, people, this can be a whole discussion in itself.
Yeah, it really could, yeah.
But, you are a very established cartoonist. And by the way, cartoonist, explain to people, because I think this discussion always comes up, explain to people the difference between a cartoonist and an illustrator, per se.
Okay. All right. So in broad terms, I consider a cartoonist is a storyteller who communicates through words and pictures. Mm-hmm. Right. So I feel like in some aspects, an illustrator's job is to communicate. It's almost the same thing. It's really close. It's virtually the same thing. I think it's just kind of like the vessel.
Yeah.
Right. So you could look at like some accomplished what do you call them? Political cartoonists as illustrators.
Right.
And some people wouldn't call them cartoonists because it's just like too graphic, or there's an elephant that says Kuwait on the side of it. So that's a nice elephant. So I guess that's illustration. The lines get pretty blurry.
Yeah.
But and I, as a cartoonist, I've taken on several illustration gigs. I consider myself an illustrator, but I think cartoonist is just a really broad term because I don't think, and I might get into trouble, that if you try to give a cartooning gig to an illustrator, you might not get the same result.
Right.
Right. If you've ever seen, like on the side of a bus, somebody who was hired to do a superhero for like Prilosec or one of those things, and it just kind of doesn't look right because it's like not the right superhero language.
Right.
We all kind of are ingrained with the Marvel way of drawing comic book superheroes, and it just looks a little funky. They probably aren't a cartoon. So I don't know if that helps explain it a little bit, but that's kind of where I'll stick to.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I don't know if that answers your question.
Almost like a to be continued.
Yeah.
But we get the gist of it.
I
think you've explained the gist of what it is in essence. But I can say this. I can add on to it to say like there is a philosophical difference in design by design of a cartoonist to an illustrator that I always see.
Okay. Yeah. We can roll with that. Yeah.
So, what sparked your passion to become a cartoonist?
Well, I'm sure most creative people or have talked to. I was always drawing. I was that kid that always had a pencil in his hand. I think a big influence for me was my mother, who passed a couple of years ago. But she was back in the day, used to call them commercial artists.
Right.
They don't really call them that anymore.
No, they do not.
I guess you call it a graphic designer.
That will be me.
The closest thing, right? Graphic design.
That is absolutely the new term.
Right. And what I really found fascinating about what she was doing was she was creating this like client work for these people I never met, and it looks just really complicated and illustrative. And she, wherever we lived, she always had a room which was like a studio with, a drafting table and templates and designer markers and all that kind of stuff. And I was kind of in. We could talk about design markers, but I was kind of just in love with the idea that there was this kind of like foreign language going on in this room. But I really fell in love with cartooning by being a fan of comic strips. Right. I grew up. I didn't really grow up reading comic books because just from where I lived in the city, I didn't even know comic book stores existed until the mid '80s. But everybody had the newspaper, so that's where a lot of my sensibilities come from. Is strip cartooning, and that's kind of what I fell in love with and always wanted to do. When I was a really young kid, I really liked Doonesbury, the Gary Trudeau strip, which isn't. I mean, it's not really a kid strip. It's not really accessible for children, but it was just something about the language that Trudeau was commanding in his work. Like the Doonesbury characters have those weird looking bracket eyes with the eyebrow. Nobody else drew like that. And I was just like, but it works because this is his universe. Right. It all makes sense in the strip. So I kind of liked also that kind of power play that you can get out of creating your own world, and people just have to take it for what it is. Right. So that's those are my early origins of wanting to be a cartoonist.
So your journey and main objective, from what I understand, is to inspire the youth of our culture and our community through education, and to help with the book Leon, Protector of the Playground. Can you talk about what led you to create Leon?
Sure. So one thing that's always very intriguing to me, and maybe not to some people, is that, you come up with ideas all the time. Right. And I have a file cabinet that has stuff in there from maybe 94 that I thought of, but it's just, I didn't really have a place for it yet, or it wasn't time. And just because you can do it doesn't mean it's the right time to put it out in the world. But I came up with Leon a long time ago, kind of a spinoff of my first self-published work. I was doing a self-published comic book called the Jamar Chronicles, and I only did 2.5 issues of it, and then I ran out of money. But I had kind of plotted out all of these far-reaching storylines, and one of them was about real quick, in the Jamar Chronicles, it was basically this really funny story of me trying to save the universe by jumping through dimensions. Right. It's very Sliders type of stuff. Now that, all the dimension stuff is played out with Rick and Morty, I was like, all right, I did that 20 years ago, but all right. This will move on. One of the dimensions, I was going to meet this kid, right? So this kid was kind of like the hero of this world, who was basically a Ward, like Robin is to Batman. Yeah. So just imagine it was basically Batman and Robin with daddy issues mixed in. So basically Batman went out for some cigarettes and never came home. He went out to get some Newports, and he never
Sometimes
came
I
back.
feel like the real Bruce is really that close to being that to Robin sometimes.
Right, he could just dip, right? He's not coming back.
Especially this recent, this modern day version. It's like Robin is just going to piss him off just a tiny bit more before he's like, I'm out.
I'm just out.
I'm going to the watchtower above in space.
He just leaves the keys to the Batcopter just on the table, and that's that. So, I was going to find this kid and kind of go through this adventure with him, and we go to his Leon cave, and it's like, yo, look at all this stuff, all this crime fighting equipment. Yo, let's get in this car. And he's like, I don't know how to drive. I'm 10. You know what I mean? So it's like a little humorous thing, and it's kind of like a daddy issue, single parent, relationship going on. But I thought that was an interesting kernel, but I kind of took that later and just kept developing it into what it is today, where the elevator pitch for Leon, which is now a middle grade graphic novel,
Right.
Is Leon is a 6th grade superhero whose power is common sense.
God, I wish. You know what's so funny? You know what's so really funny and sad about that is that you think that is something that everybody should grasp, but not really people do in reality.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting that that's your choice of power, but it's also sad. It's like you would. The irony of it is like, really? Don't everybody have? No, they don't.
They don't. They just don't.
They really don't. Have you seen social media? No.
Yeah, that's the last thing that people have these days. And
It's like the abyss.
yeah, it's bad out there. And one of the cool things that I try to bring back into the character design is he basically looks like a kid who's playing dress up.
Yes.
And I wanted to kind of take some of those elements of when you were a kid before you could go to Target and get an Iron Man costume.
You make it up yourself.
Right? Yeah, you make it up yourself. We're not from this earth where you can just go get you a Black Widow costume.
That's how you used to do when you're around the way. That's old around the way Philly thinking.
Yeah,
that's like if you're a wrestler fan, you make cardboard belts. That's the type of thinking that you do.
We gotta talk, man. I got stories.
I hear you.
But yeah, right. So like Leon's look is he almost I never said it in the book, but he basically has like on rubber dishwashing gloves, like
Right.
these oversized gloves and a tablecloth around his neck, and a utility belt and some goggles, and that's it. Let's go. And what I wanted to do was kind of give back a vibe of imagination and play, and I'm using all my educator words here,
Right.
or just kind of like the pure essence of what it would be like to be a kid and have these adventures. Right. So that's kind of where I got his look from, also.
Awesome. So, what led you to become an educator as well as focus on a younger demographic?
That's an easy answer. Really, a lot of that came from me growing up in Philly and not having good outlets for where I wanted to go with my life. Like I always wanted to be a cartoonist. Like if you round up anybody that knew me back when we were kids, they'll go like, "Oh yeah, he was always drawing." I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. Yeah, I see Jamar. He be doing this. Like you wouldn't be surprised, but nobody really championed that because everybody when we're kids, everybody drew.
Yeah.
No,
me especially.
Right
before I became a commercial artist.
Yes, you're going to use that now.
It was right. I go retro with it. But it was me with before that. It was like me with Ninja Turtles or Super Mario and all that stuff. Or later on, it was Jim Lee and as much people will debate this. Rob Liefeld. It was all that.
Yo, I tell people it's like y'all front on Liefeld, but
he made money.
In the '90s. Those books were hot.
You don't put him on the Levi's commercial unless he was doing something right.
Everybody had him like on front.
He was Easy E approved. You can't.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
But yeah. Wait, what was our question?
I knew you was gonna get drawn on this fight. No, we were talking about you being an educator in
I'm sorry.
demographic.
We could just talk about Philly for an hour.
Exactly.
So the educator. So basically growing up, I was fortunate enough that with my mother, with her background, was able to kind of lead me in better directions than a lot of other kids that I knew. And even then, people didn't really take art seriously to the fact that, especially if you were black and you were a designer or you were, an artist with some type of skin in the game.
Yeah.
But she would say things like if you really want to do your cartoons, here, give me this. You got to draw. You got to start with the shapes first. She was like giving, she was giving me these little like hints that I would never have gotten from any place else or on the streets.
Right.
And that kind of put me in a path to feeling like if I ever got on, right, or if I ever blew up, or if I ever got to a place where I could give back, I would want to be that person that kid could look up to and go, oh, this guy does this for a living. I want to do this too. And, so that's a bridge that I've always tried to keep open in my work. Like I do library visits, I do school appearances, I do that kind of stuff just to, keep the spirit of comics alive in kids.
That's fantastic.
So thanks, man. It's real. I guess you could say it was selfish because I really don't want comics to die, and I know, adult fans of comic books don't really think much about reaching down to the younger generations to pass on the hobby.
Right. Especially in this day and age, because I mean, the '90s when the bubble popped, with the boom period, and I can say I'm one of those people who kind of fell off.
Yeah.
After a certain point, when all the rock stars went to Image and then they just started swarming around everywhere.
Yeah.
I didn't follow them like the McRib. I just stood my ground and just went for another genre and format, but still kind of stayed within the game just in case, just keeping up on certain things.
Right.
But it's not the same flair. Like I still got all my stash and everything here. And my long boxes and everything, but it's like I'm waiting for that time to really jump back on and say like, this is what it is right now. This is what I have that passion to want to read, and I want to, I'm waiting for that hot period right now.
Well, it's funny because we're really in an odd golden age of comics. Mm-hmm. There's some amazing stuff on the racks if you can afford it.
Yeah. That's a whole other thing too. Yeah.
And even just looking at the image of 95 to the image of 2019, it's like a totally different company.
Oh yeah, it is.
And I think it's exciting, especially with, I say a lot. I don't like talking about mainstream comic books too much,
right.
But just like when I'm sure if you talk to some people about, hey, Marvel was bankrupt like almost 15 years ago.
Right.
And that's where all these properties wound up because they were just trying to keep the lights on.
Exactly.
To where we are now. But just like when, Quesada came in as the editor at Marvel and he started bringing in these indie guys to do books.
Yeah.
Like that's where Bendis came from. And
kind of still is in a sense, if I'm correct.
Right. It's still like that. But all of a sudden, like the house styles of the 90s and the little earlier period started to shift, and you would see different cartooning styles come in the door. Like that's back before that when Mignola was doing Marvel books, and people were like, "Yo, what is this?"
Yeah.
They're like, "Oh, when Hellboy popped, it was like, yo, this guy's amazing." But it's just like we were kind of fed a style, and that's what the style was. And once somebody started shaking it up. It just kind of opened the door to different types of craft. And anyway, what I'm getting at is that comic books are however you want to read them now.
Right.
Which, what I'm saying, which wasn't the case back in the 90s or the 80s.
Right.
There was a style to it that you had to follow. So if you're a fan of Bigfoot cartooning, I'm sure you'd find a comic. Yeah. If you're into like hyper realism, I'm sure there's a comic. If you like goofy stuff, you know what I mean? It's like
there's a lot of variety out there now.
Right. You know what I mean? And I just feel like that's a really cool thing if you're a fan of the art form.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. I can't afford to buy comics.
It is. And even furthermore, there's the streaming networks with comics now, and it's getting so oversaturated at this point. Yeah. Trust me, I empathize with that.
Oh yeah, and it's I don't know. There's other things of just being like in the industry where you have to really love something to give it any air, And you'll see a lot of people who have like their top 5 books because it's probably the friends are on it, or because the people are just like taking it back to like the essence of what good comic books are.
Right.
But I don't think anybody can afford to hit the store every week, and buy.
But also there's also they're in competition with all these other fandoms, content. You just tons of content.
Yeah. To
entertain you now. It's they're competing against. They're in an uphill with a lot of different genres now.
Right. Right. Oh, and just to kind of wrap that thing up.
Yeah.
Is now where do kids fit in any of this?
That's a good question. That's a very good question.
Like, where do kids fit? And one thing that I've been following for maybe the past 10 12 years since I started doing graphic novels is the eyes are shifting to graphic novels. And I'm not going to get into the fight about what is a graphic novel, what is a comic book.
Right.
It's not really about that. It's just that.
That's what Wikipedia and Google is for.
Yeah. You do the math on that. But it's just, that there's this young lady who I'm friends with who's the New York Times best-selling author on the planet, but she doesn't do Spider-Man.
Right.
She does a book about getting braces. Or, you know what I mean? Or, being on drama club and things like that. Right. And it's blowing up the world. So I think if you aren't feeding kids good graphic content, what's going to keep them reading comic books? Just like you said, there's so many different things to use your time with, especially just with iPads and all that kind of stuff.
I just say if you create a great enough narrative, it'll draw somebody in.
That's true.
One of the biggest problems I think what Marvel has been going through for the last few years is that their lack of real in-depth narrative in their storytelling, and I think that's one of the reasons why I fell off of Marvel. I mean, DC's doing pretty good with their storytelling and narrative, but like Marvel, it was like they were trying to do so many things, also trying to do the cinematic universe and stuff. It just to me it fell off. To many people actually it fell off. So this is why I think indie books are now becoming a more popular part of the subgenre of the industry now.
Right, and that's great for me.
Yeah, it is.
Well, I mean, I don't even really know how to quantify what I do anymore. And as far as the industry is concerned, I'm really fortunate that I've been able to make a name for myself, not doing somebody else's work. Right. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and
I hear you.
It's very rare, and I'm really cognizant of that. Right. But once in a while, like you said, like the cream rises to the top, or however that saying go. Like when Bone came out in the 90s, you couldn't look away from that. You know what I mean? And that's such a throwback to classic cartooning. Like Jeff Smith's, style is really
so iconic too. The minute you mention that, I just visualize that art style in my head. Right,
it just jumps right into your head. It's amazing.
Yeah, and it's very simplistic too. That's the crazy part about it.
And Smith is a classic cartoonist, and he's a student. Like a lot of his style comes from Walt Kelly, who did Pogo back in the days. And when I'm teaching comic book classes or cartooning classes, I bring up that old stuff because that's where the essence of all this stuff is. And the DNA is in those old strips. But you couldn't deny it, and I agree with you. Just having really dope stuff, it's always going to stand out. But there's so much stuff.
Yeah, it really is. So, all right, let's take it back to Keystone Comic Con real quick. I mean, when I first saw you and the rest of your crew in that panel, it was the Just Kill the Joker comics as catalyst for discussions and ethics on and philosophical thoughts.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a mouthful.
It is, but it all makes sense once you understand the situation. Right. I love the discussion about moral and ethics. That's one of my, just if I can have a Socrates Cafe with a group of people and just talk about some of these things, this is really kind of a mind opener for those to understand how the world works and how it should work in a sense, right? Based upon certain situations. And I was also that was the one reason why I wanted to come to the panel. The other reason why is because I was reading the room because I was going to be doing a panel in that same room the next day.
Right. Well, you're counting the chairs and stuff.
Now, granted, you got to understand, this was the first time I've ever done a panel, and Keystone invited me and offered me to do two of them.
Oh, wow.
One of which was the big one right next door to that one. And I was doing an Overwatch panel. Yeah. And I was and I looked at him that's 300 seats. Do you think this is really going to fill up? And it kind of did. So,
that's great. No, congratulations, man. That's a great feeling.
The great feeling was I need to just let loose. This was like my 8 Mile moment. I need to go in and let it go.
Mild spaghetti.
Yeah, exactly. No hurling though. I was all right. I did.
All right, you're good. Shadow boxing in the mirror, right? Like,
Exactly. You think I didn't have a playlist ready to hype myself up for that one? But also, I just come out that I really enjoyed your panel. I really loved how the attendees that were there and how they were bringing on some great points about certain about the subject matter. How did that panel come about?
Well, it's funny. Comic books is it's almost like Philly. Philly is a series of neighborhoods, and like a lot of the personalities in comics are either you kind of know of other people, or you kind of flip through a mental Rolodex of like, yo, I need this. It's almost like Mission Impossible or the Avengers. Like, yo, I need Tigra and Black Knight, and I need Wasp for this one.
Right.
You know what I mean? And the organizer or the moderator of that panel, John Shableski, has a really storied past in comics. He worked for Diamond Distributors for a long time.
Right, I met him. That's right.
Yeah, and John has an encyclopedic knowledge of the comic book industry from the other side.
If I'm correct, he's the one that works with Udon Entertainment too. Correct?
Yeah, it works for Udon now.
Yeah, that's I did have a chance to meet because that was the panel that I was doing the next day was with the Udon crew.
Yeah. And a lot of comic book creatives are like icebergs. Like you might just see the top of them, like some balding guy with glasses in a bad shirt. But underneath the water is just like years and years and years of moving around and knowing people and being in the same room with the right people. Right. So, long story short, like John reaches out to certain people when there's like educational things going on, and then it's in Philly, and then maybe there's a little diversity angle in there. You just keep ticking them off, and then I get a phone call. You know what I mean? So, and I always appreciate being on things like that. I always enjoy panels. I know a lot of people that don't like doing panels because it's just, oh man, my neck gets hot and I'm on the spot and I don't know what to say. And come on, man, I just want to go sell some books. So, there's also that, and there's not everybody can do that stuff. And I'm not trying to big up myself. I'm just saying.
Well, let's put it like this. You're bigging up me because I've never done it before until that time, and honestly, I'm not nowhere in a stretch an introvert by any stretch. So I really enjoyed the opportunity. I already interview people already, like I'm doing with you right now. So this was kind of a no brainer. And if it came to like having a big crowd, my focus was on my guest.
Yeah, that's right. Don't look in the lights.
Exactly.
Yeah, just look at the people next to you, right?
Exactly. Even though after a while, I did go kind of Phil Donahue on people.
You running into the audience with a mic.
Yeah, no, I literally did. I was like, let's just keep this ball rolling.
No, that's good, and I think that's a trait of a good moderator. Like you're actually moderating, and those, most of those things. What always bugs me about panels at comic book conventions, they're never long enough.
Yeah, that hour did go really quick.
It goes by so fast, and by the time you get through the introductions and where's your website and where can I buy your T-shirt, it's like it's over.
You got to catch. I literally I don't know how I did it, but I managed to get all of it in on time and in place. Like to me, CPT time means corporate people time. So it's like I keep it on point at all times. I was very happy to know that those panels went out without a hitch. They got out on time, before time, and people were left entertained.
That's great. That's what it's all about, right? You want people to leave the room feeling like they spent their time wisely, or they maybe have a new kernel of thinking about something in a different way. Yeah,
absolutely. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about one of my favorite, writers and legendary people to which you received an award based upon, and that was you are the winner of the Dwayne Mcduffie Award for Diversity in 2018. Congratulations on that.
Thank you. It still kind of blows our mind that I have this statue over there.
I can only imagine. I was like, wow. What did that this is probably a stupid question in a sense, but what did that honor mean to you, especially with it being based on one of the legends in comic books and animated TV writing?
Well, Dwayne Mcduffie meant a lot to me personally. And also, like, I got to meet him a couple of times. I'm not going to say we were buddies or anything, but we were friendly.
You got touched by an angel, pretty much.
Yeah, right.
And
thinking about the rarefied air of just, you could at the one point count black creators on, your hands and your feet, and that would kind of be it. And
so much to the point you got to count Jack Kirby and Stan Lee in a sense. That's how. Just to add on some more numbers.
Right, we got to just to beef up our side here. So I was privileged enough to meet Dwayne a couple of times and interact with him, and I think I reached out to him just like on some like, yo, how could I be down type of stuff back when I first.
Oh, they had a movement too back then, so
right.
They were comics Public Enemy.
Yeah, man. That was the wave back then. But just seeing what he meant to the industry and the doors that he opened, and for the creators that were smart enough to understand that a door was open and to go through it, just meant a lot to even where I'm at right now. Right. Where if Dwayne's influence hadn't happened in comics and animation and just even in the entertainment industry, I probably wouldn't be in the spot I'm at.
Right.
So, being kind of honored with this award with his name on it, just kind of like, it was just like probably the biggest feather I have in any of my hats.
Right.
And, I kind of stammered through an acceptance speech because I didn't believe it.
And just that the name and the name of it's based on Tied with You, it's surreal.
Yeah, it's great, and I appreciate you even bringing this up because what I said to Dwayne's widow, because she's kind of in charge of the whole organization, is that whatever you need from me, let me know. Besides like this is a big honor, but I don't want to just, take this and run off into the night with it.
Right.
Let me know how we can do some outreach, or if you want me to
continue the legacy.
Yeah, you know what I mean? If I could, whatever I can do to just be in this air, like I want to represent it, you know what I'm saying? So, since this just happened a year ago and already, there's already a 2019 winner.
Yeah.
And I feel like we could even be doing more with this. But, I put that out there and I try not to, blow that horn too much. And
that's what I'm here for. Don't worry about it.
Well, thanks, man. And people are like, oh, cool. But you know what I mean?
It was really interesting. I mean, better late than never. But Mcduffie's work is something that first of all, back in the 90s, I was in high school. I was one of those lame brain kids, so to speak, that was only attracted to the visuals. And me being an artist too, I was really attracted to the visuals. I didn't really have much in a sense of the narrative portion of it until later when I watched like Justice League Unlimited and found out that he was responsible for what I used to call one of the greatest animated TV shows of all time. And when I started, it was the storytelling and the dialogue and everything about it was so deep for its time. Mm-hmm. It was prime time that they were playing this too, and some of the subject matter, and it was like, wow. Mm-hmm. And it just struck me like, who's writing this? And that's when I found out it was him. And then I started researching for. I'm like, oh God, he's the one who's responsible for this and this and this and this. Mm-hmm. And it was like, I was like, you know what? I feel bad, but I don't, because at least I do now still have respect. And it allowed me to really understand and respect storytelling and writing of comic books now. I mean, I had Jeffrey Thorne on the show like 3 times already, because he was the showrunner for Black Panther's Quest a while back, and he also did some other things for Marvel as well. And we talked about Mcduffie and his work, and how much of an influence he's been to him. I mean, I like Jeff Thorne's writing as well. I mean, anybody who could make something out of Solo from Marvel.
I love Solo.
I love him now because Solo in the 90s was a dork. But Jeff, after reading Jeff's version, I totally love the direction that they put on him, and I wish they would have did more with him.
Yeah.
I thought it was awesome. I thought this could have been transitioned into a TV show.
Wow.
That type of situation.
Yeah, I could see that happening.
Just the way the character development in there was really well done in there.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, that's really awesome. And again, let's just go back to the fact of you being an educator here. But as an educator, do you find yourself harder to encourage kids in our community, especially when a lot of the situations that we deal with, not only just within our culture, but everything that's going on in this country today? How do you go about that? That said a mouthful right there.
No. I mean, it's a really strong question.
Yeah.
I think what I've done in the classroom, and just to kind of open this up a little bit, generally what I do is, I teach writing for comics at Drexel.
Okay.
And that's kind of like my adjunct gig, and I've spent a lot of time doing youth classes. I've taught at Moore College of Art for a really long time. I used to do the Young Artist Workshop and the Saturday things and that, all of that stuff, the summer programs. And, I've taught kids from 4th grade up to high school, and I do college. And when I'm dealing with kids, probably like, school age, they're coming into the classroom with a lot of heavy weight on their shoulders. Yeah. And, it's really important to me that if they can even escape their environment long enough to sit down and want to draw something, that feels like that might be my opening to try to, show them that there's other things out there. So beyond just the cartooning and, the storytelling, it's kind of like, this might sound kind of nerdy, but I really want to try to show them that they can express themselves through their stories, rather than drawing, Wolverine cutting somebody in half. Tell me about what happened to you last week when you went home.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it can be cathartic if you take it that way. But, I'm a big fan of journal comics.
Yeah.
And there are a couple of kind of names in the industry who just do comic journaling and things like that. And, depending on how you feel about people like R. Crumb and those kind of cats in 2019, just the idea that you can expose your soul on paper is a really powerful tool. And a lot of people can't do that. Right. Just thinking about self-censoring yourself. Do you have a sketchbook full of naked women? Right. That you drew, do you show that to anybody? We all have hang-ups as creatives, but just trying to unlock that early in kids, I think, is really powerful. So I try to reach them on that wavelength.
Right. Fantastic. So can you talk about the points of inspiration that you use to when educating and encouraging kids?
Sure. Kind of like people I show them.
Not exactly like a syllabus, pretty much, but just the main bullet points of which you try to focus on to try to engage with them or get them to understand and open up and to be able to keep positive.
Sure. Well, a big part of what I do, and I'll be transparent, I haven't taught kids in a while, but I'm still in contact with different age groups, is kind of coming from the beginning of the art form, right? Back to yellow journalism and the Yellow Kid and Crazy Cat and Ignatz and Little Nemo and Slumberland. I used to bring a Little Nemo, those really big oversized books with the newspaper strips in it, right? And that would just blow the kids away just from a artistic standpoint. Wow, what is this? No, this was the paper, and each strip got its own page in the newspaper back then, and right. It's almost about thinking about expanding your universe and what can you do if you had a whole page to yourself, and then kind of coming from the macro into the micro, just kind of I'm a big fan of comics as a directorial tool. I talk about the power of controlling time, right, through a comic book page, and how the gutters in between the panels show the passing of time, but that's up to you to what you show. Right. There's a lot of power there if you want to use it. And and you can control people's emotions with your stories. Like, do you want somebody to laugh? Do you want to make them sad?
Right.
You can do all that in a comic, and some kids may not have any type of control over their lives at home, but some of that they can control on the page. So rather than, again, looking for just a general escape and drawing SpongeBob on a piece of paper for 40 minutes, let's see what we can do with this storytelling form. So that's what I try to do with little kids. Oh, also I show them Astro Boy, because Astro Boy is dope. One of my favorite things was I think one of the comic shops I went to was trying to throw away the Dark Horse manga reprints of Astro Boy. There were like 30 volumes of it.
And they call themselves a comic book store.
They just needed room. Like, this is like that weird period when manga wasn't really hitting yet. Remember that? And you just had to be some sort of like otaku nerd to know about Astro Boy like that.
Oh well, well, especially considering that's like kind of the genesis.
Yes. In
a sense of all of it.
Yeah, right. That's like, if you want to boil it all down, it starts with him. You give somebody Astro Boy. Mm-hmm. And I remember there was this little girl in my class who wasn't feeling anything. She didn't want to draw. She just sat there with her hand in her face, just like pouting. And I was like, yo, read this and take it home. Just bring it back when you're done. And like the next day she came back. She's like, do you have any more of those? Like those are some great teaching moments. Like when just the light bulb comes on,
right.
Just like, this is like pure storytelling right here. Like you feel so bad for the robots, and what about robots' rights and all that weird stuff that was going on in Astro Boy.
You know what I like about the way that you teach, and I have some friends who also are educators as well, but some of them use comic books to express, to open up and broaden the imagination and concept and logic of people. Of the people that they teach, of the kids that they teach. I think it's a method that I think people should really, school districts should really, really think about using more often, because not everybody can learn the same way.
That's really true.
Some people are kinesthetic. Some people just, are very studious and can, read a book and check it out. Some people are just, can, listen to every word you say and naturally gifted towards that. There's different ways of teaching. Right. I think that's just another way that people figured out how, you do it. And I don't think we should always keep with the traditional structure of things.
Right. And that's a really great note to point out that my last graphic novel before Leon, Fist Stick Knife Gun, has, like, that book came out. It's going to be 10 years next year.
Wow.
That book was published. And I keep running into people that have been reading that in their high school classrooms. Like it's what do you call it? It's like a text now.
Nice.
And I hear about like, oh, wait, you drew that? Yeah. Oh, I had to read that in my social justice class in my freshman year of college. And it's crazy, but just talking about using like the power narrative. Oh, sorry, that was my clock. my clock says the hour in Japanese. Just the fact that, you take a book about some kid growing up in the South Bronx in the 50s and you make it relatable to now and show kind of like empathy. That's a big thing with me. Like, I want somebody who is white and is from upstate New York. If I put that book in their hands, they'll feel something.
Yeah.
And to find out that something that I did like that is still kind of making the rounds and changing lives. I mean, that's the power of graphic novels to me right there.
Some things are best understood through visual.
Yeah.
That's my belief about it.
Yeah.
I want to ask you about this. Because I talked about this with other people within our culture. I talked about this with Jeffrey Thorne as well. We grew up. I think our particular demographic, mine's yours. We grew up in the 70s, 80s realm of things. When we grew up, the term nerd stood for anybody that was socially, that was without, social awareness.
Right.
Didn't understand the boundaries of things and was just so in depth to whatever it is that they were into that normal society was not.
Right.
Didn't matter what color you were.
Right.
So by saying that, what is your take on the blurred subculture?
Oh man, you're gonna get me in trouble.
No, we're all gonna get in trouble, and I don't care about this one. But let's roll with this. Let's get down on this.
All right, so
we're gonna be like Isaac Hayes, and I forgot what's the other one from. I'm gonna get you, sucker.
Was it Jim Brown? Right?
Yeah, Jim Brown. Just make sure we don't trip on any bullets. We'll be fine. We'll be able to fight this back. But I want to know your take on the blurred culture.
All right, so coming from that place that you were just talking about, like do you remember back in the 80s when the Burger King had where's the Fine Herb contest, and that's where that word came from, like, yo, that dude's a herb. Remember that?
Yeah.
It wasn't cool to be a nerd at all, and I'm going to get to your point. I gotta cook this. I can't really say what I was. I knew I was a little bit of an introvert. I didn't like people. I didn't like other kids. I didn't like the opportunistic qualities that young people have,
right?
Especially boys. Right. There's nothing more conniving than a 16-year-old boy. He's going to get over on you in any way he can see.
I would agree with that.
That's real talk. Like we were all 16 at some point.
Yes.
But I had some things that I did which basically kept me from getting poked with a screwdriver on the subway. Mm-hmm. Like I played Dungeons and Dragons when I was in 6th grade.
Right.
And I didn't talk about it because that's some nerd shit. I'm sorry. Right. I don't know if you can.
No, you're good. You're good.
You know what I mean? Like, and there were just things you just kept to yourself because you knew you were just going to get clowned for it.
Right.
To where we are now, where it's like, everybody's trying to claim their set now, right? Yeah, I was into Star Trek. I was into this. I was into that. That's cool. I kind of take umbrage with the term black nerd, though.
Please explain.
And my issue is, and Lord knows I know a lot of blurs, right? Mm-hmm. I've been on blurred panels. Like, I get it, and I'm not going to fight over the term. But I think I think it limits us again. Like, nerds are white people, but I like white stuff and I'm black, so that makes me a black nerd,
right?
Which also, like, I just read this really interesting article about just because you're a person of color who likes geeky stuff doesn't mean you want to be white or you're trying to act white. And I thought that was a really interesting article. It didn't really go anywhere, so I didn't share it with anybody. I read it and put it away.
Right.
But it makes a lot of sense. Like, I remember when I was in college, I went to UArts here in Philly. And, I mainly grew up around, like, urban black girls.
Yeah.
Right. That is what it is. And I remember meeting this girl who was not from here. Mm-hmm. And she was into Guns N' Roses, and she wore Chuck Taylors.
Right.
And she had like wild hair, and the other black girls did not know what to do with her.
Sounds like very West Coast.
Right? Yeah, I think she was from L.A. or something.
Yeah, because look, even to this day, the West Coast and the East Coast are two different dimensions.
Yeah.
Especially as far as community, as like who they date, who they deal with, stuff like that. There's still, universal racism all over, but there's just some communities that assimilate a little bit better than others.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, I remember I didn't know what to do with this person then. Like, I just thought she was kind of odd, but cool.
Right.
And what I found really cool about her was that she totally owned her identity.
Right.
And I think that's something that a lot of us as people of color, especially coming up in a place where you got to hide your true self just to survive, have a problem with. And I think it's getting better as the decades roll on and people are more comfortable in their skin, or they're proud to be, like wave their flag or whatever.
Well, look at it now. The whole trend nerd, definition is now trendy.
Right. Yeah.
Which is crazy.
Geek culture is pop culture now.
Yeah, exactly.
It's flipped, right? But I don't, and I'm all about people kind of claiming, whatever they're into or their love. But I just can't get down with the BLERD thing. Like I'm not like knocking anybody for it, but like I've never said it. I'm saying, like, I've never said, yeah, I'm a BLERD.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
One, this is clearly a generational thing.
Yeah, it's totally a generational thing.
Two, it's a generational thing that's trying to be extra for the sake of being extra. It's like we don't for a community and culture or a subculture that doesn't want to be labeled. We're sure finding a lot of labels.
Right.
When I first heard of the term of this somewhat subculture, and I saw it was very transparent to me. I saw it for what it was, and I was like, why? When the term nerd, in my understanding, back in the 80s and even in the 90s, nerd was universal.
Right.
It was like whoever just stood out of the popular crowd.
Right.
And that little bit of that little demographic of nerds were never racist towards one another. They had something in common.
Right.
There was no need to separate them. And now I'm hearing about this BLERD thing. Not that it's already been established, but it's just so ridiculous. I don't think it's a way of, like, to me, I'm trying to articulate the way that I can say it without insulting anybody, but it to me, it's a facade of something that we don't need. It's separating, it's isolating us more than we need to. We need less isolation within our community and just in general. And that just having that, to me, it's dangerous in some cases to even have that.
Well, I kind of boil it all down to being yourself is probably the most powerful thing you could do.
Absolutely.
Right? And more strength in hearts and good energy vibrations and waves to anybody who can find the courage to walk out of their house and be proud of who they are.
Absolutely. It's kind of like how people always try to, the health trend, where it's like you want to go on the Atkins diet, you want to do the
the keto or
the
whatever.
Keto, exactly, the keto diet, when all you have to do is just a push up or a jumping jack.
I don't know, man. I can't say too much.
I mean,
I'm not the
it is what it is, but it's like it's
Right.
just the bare basics.
Right.
You're trying to just make things a little bit more exciting in your life, or you're trying to make yourself feel more important by labeling yourself, or you're representing yourself in a certain way. Hell, isn't being black just enough?
That should be the title of this.
Exactly.
So, but just think about the power of finding your tribe, right?
Right.
When you find those other kids in your school that really like Bleach.
Right.
Or Naruto reruns or whatever, and you just kind of can geek out with these people.
Right.
And how important that is to you, finding your community. And I can kind of understand how these things kind of percolate, especially on a comic book convention floor.
Yeah.
Right. There's only so many of us, but hey, we're all wearing Naruto wigs. I'm just beating on Naruto, but that's not necessarily it. And just
an example,
right? And finding a tribe inside of a sub niche, I think it still has some merit.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I just
think it's just doing too much when you don't have to do it at all, and it's just like be a fan, a fan of what This is why, like, when I created this brand called A.C.M.G, which created this podcast, in a sense, the idea was for everybody to enjoy all things anime, comics, movies, and games.
Gotcha.
But and still feeling proud of who you are. Mm-hmm. It was kind of the original philosophy of what Dr. King wanted us to be, as much as I could try to make it.
Right.
And I feel like, when it comes to the BLERD thing, it's this mindset that I always say is like, people say Dr. King, but their minds say early Malcolm Little.
Gotcha.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And the ideology and the philosophy just goes completely convoluted, and it ends up having us doing, stupid stuff like this. and I don't want to say it's stupid because there is a positive, sort of a positive direction that they want to go, but I think they just feel like they're going the wrong way about it.
So what do you have any solutions?
That's the thing. It's like just be one with everybody who are fans. Everybody, the one thing that we all have in common, and I have a Facebook group that has over 2,000 people in there, and they're all different colors, ethnicities, orientations, if you will.
Yeah, right.
But the one thing we have in common, our bloodstream bleeds with fandom for all of the same things.
Sure.
And no matter what, I never understood what the difference of opinion that a BLERD would have to everybody else in society.
Right.
If I understood that, maybe I would probably support it more in a sense. But I'm like, what is the difference between the philosophy of you loving Naruto as opposed to everybody else in other cultures loving Naruto?
Right. Why has it got to be so like line in the sand, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, if you don't have to, and I know there's times when we have to represent us. We have to show our strength. We have to show our power.
Right.
We pick our battles.
That's super true. Yeah, you have to.
We have to pick our battles, and that's not one of the battles I think we should pick.
Well, do you think that's another part of being maybe young or being in a place where, you're still trying to find your voice?
I was about to say that. Yes, I believe it is. And that's pretty much what it comes down to. And sometimes you might just have to let them figure it out for themselves.
Right. Maybe that's the answer.
And look from the back, and just in case something jumps off and goes down, and when the time comes, then you step in. But it's like, all right, let them be them.
Right. And
let them figure it out for themselves. They're just 16, 17, 18 right now. When they get to the college level, that's when it's like, what the hell are we thinking?
Hey, man, I don't know. I knew a lot of black kids that had those rayon shirts with Spawn all over it in the 90s. That happened.
We're not going to talk about
that. See? It struck a nerve. But you know what I'm saying. We
with your rayon silk or maybe even denim.
Maybe even denim. That's great.
So I got just a couple more questions, but I definitely want to thank you for being on this show. I'm really enjoying the conversation with you. This is absolutely awesome. So as far as comic books go in the stage of this industry, and we kind of briefly talked about it and touched on it, do you believe that we finally have a grasp on representation, especially within the mainstream publishers like Marvel, DC, Image, and even the indies? Where do you think that we stand now as far as total representation? I feel like it's getting there, but I don't know if we're there yet.
Here's, my answer to that is going to be, I think we're as close as we've been in decades. And that sounds kind of backwards to say, well, of course it was worse back then. But my quick little sidebar is, I know some white people who love Luke Cage, right? But they hated that Netflix show. And you know why they didn't like it is because it wasn't their Luke Cage.
It wasn't the Jive Turkey.
It wasn't the Jive Turkey yellow, chain belt Luke Cage, who strutted down the street.
Despite the fact knowing that he eventually changed his wardrobe later on.
Right. Like, where's my money, honey? Which is kind of funny. Yeah. But that's the Luke Cage they like. And what's scary about that is, like I've met some interesting white people who love blaxploitation. Yeah. But, like I've gotten into some serious arguments over that whole thing.
Kind of respectfully so, I bet.
Right? And so, but now, like, we're back here again, where I think this is probably the strongest period where we've seen just varying and mostly positive representations and inclusion and all those things, even in LGBTQ and all these other kind of avenues are all kind of funneling into pop culture, right?
Yeah.
Which should be great. It's great. I think it's always worrisome when you have the other who think it's a gimmick, right?
Yeah.
Oh, well, the fact that there's even a book with black women in it on a comic book shelf is, what do they call it? Like the virtue signaling and all that kind of stuff. Right. You know what I mean? And it's a very tiresome conversation to have, because, there's some people that just can't deal with it. Mm-hmm. Right. They can't deal with diversity. They can't deal with inclusion. They can't deal with why is this character black when he used to be what? Yeah. We could spend an hour talking about that.
Especially the recent news that I'm sure you've known about with the X-Men possibilities.
Oh yeah, that's the new thing where they're saying like in the MCU, like Denzel might be Magneto or something. Right. I think they're just trolling us. But it's this weird two sides of the street here, where if you said that to some people outside, they'd be like, "Oh yeah, Denzel, get it, get the bag, Denzel," and then you have other people like, "What? No, what?" And want to really explain it down. Right. And I have some very unpopular things to say. Like, at the end of the day, I don't want to say it's just comics, but it's all made up.
Right. And you know what? No, I agree. I think that's something, because you read threads all the time on social media. They take it so freaking far. Like, the fate of their life depends on what these writers do, and they also forget that they're writers and they can write whatever the hell they want. Right. Like, they think it's the Bible. They really think it's the gospel.
And I was at the Black Comic Book Festival in Harlem a couple of years ago, and this is right before Black Panther came out. Right. And everybody was hot about Black Panther. Black Panther. They're making a movie about Black Panther, and I was like, yo, real rap, I don't think half you cats have ever read a Black Panther comic book, but that's not my.
That's here nor there.
It's either here nor there. I'm just saying. But, I kind of took a lot of people's excitement as this is something that's never happened before, right, without having the context of, decades of comic book history. But I was on a panel, and somebody stood up and was like, how y'all feel about Black Panther? And everybody was like, all right. And, there was some high-fiving in the audience and all of that. And, I even said this in our panel at the Keystone. Sometimes I'll kind of go left when everybody's going right. And I said, love Black Panther. Nobody on this stage owns Black Panther. Disney owns Black Panther. I'm very happy that there's a black movie with black people in it, with black clothes and black jets.
Directed by a black man.
Right, by black. It was black, go black, all black, Wakanda forever. But right outside the door where we're having this conversation is a lobby filled with black comic book creators who created their own work that they would love to sell you. Right. Why don't you go visit them? You know what I mean? Right. So. And I got a couple claps, and people were kind of like, yo, who's this bougie dude? You know what I mean? But, it stands to reason that we're kind of fighting ourselves a lot of times. Like, there's a black movement going through comics with indie creators putting out amazing work right now. And I know there's people that still come to, say, black comic book festivals and things like that because they're looking for Black Panther books. Right. And you have to educate a lot of people on just what's out there and what your choices are. So, when you take something like, Miles Morales or something, which Spider-Verse was dope. It's probably the best thing I've seen in a long time. Right. I love Spider-Verse.
Oh, it's just a work of art.
Yeah, it was beautiful, and I love how they've kind of crafted this new narrative into the Spider-Man lore. And I'm a big Spider-Man dude; that's my guy.
Same here,
right? I'm a Spider-Man guy. That's just it. And I love that we can have these conversations now, but it doesn't move my needle to say that Spider-Man is black. Right. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think if I was a little kid, it was different. We're from a different time because things were just what they were when we were kids, and it wasn't like this kind of fight or like this yelling into the wind about what you think things should be, because you just used your imagination and it was what you made it. Right. And I think that coming back to Leon is kind of where I'm going with that. It's like we had to use our imaginations to fill in the blanks on really bad Spider-Man TV shows. Like, it's almost there, but it's not there. But on top of all that, we were just happy that it was on TV. Yeah. didn't expect him to be black because you know, I mean, that's like too much of an ask.
Well, people don't understand too because
You know what I'm saying?
we lived in an era
Yeah.
where we were filled with self-fulfilling prophecies of a lot of things.
Yeah.
I mean, we put it upon ourselves, and then there was other people that put it on us as well. And I remember there was an era, late 80s, 90s, where there was a TV show where a man was a doctor, the wife was a lawyer, and in the streets, people were like, as successful as it was, people in the streets were like, yo, that can't really happen.
Yo, that's real talk, man.
And let me tell you, Jamar, to this day, regardless of all the situations of that particular show was talked about, that has pissed me off so much hearing people say that. It angered me, even at that young age. It angered me. When like, why can't this be true? Why is this? I don't understand. And you know, upon years later, growing up and taking psychology and sociology, I'm like, oh. Okay. I get it now.
I get it now.
This is a chain reaction of ideology here.
But yeah, that was a huge thing. I remember that. You know, Thursdays at 8:00, it was on, but people still kind of had a lot to say about how fake it was.
Well, we were hot on it at the first season or so like that, but then as time goes by, when things were getting so good and so successful, that's when our mindsets are programmed to be like, no, we can't accept success of this magnitude.
That's deep. That's deep.
It's deep, but it's also sadly real, and it's scary, and it's angering. It's a whole bunch of emotions when you take the red pill and you realize everything that's going on, and why are we thinking this way, and why is this happening, and why is this so programmed to us. It angers me, it upsets me, it almost makes me cry at times just thinking about it.
Yeah, no, that's a real thing. And here comes my cat.
Hey, I'm a cat owner too. I get it.
Yeah, and when the dog shows up, it's going to be a war in here. But yeah, I mean, that's just a real fight that I want to feel like we've gotten better at over the decades. But I just think we just changed the narrative and keep having the same arguments. You know.
And I'm tired of the recycling.
Yeah, it's an
infinite loop, and we need to cut that loop.
Yeah, and or even just kind of talking about black stuff as it is. I'm well aware of kind of like the buying and spending habits of a lot of our people, and just because I'm set up at a comic book show doesn't mean this black smiling family is going to come to my table and buy my book,
right?
Because they're there for what's hot on TV right now. Right. You know what I mean? That's just how it is. But you want to think that there'd be some space for everybody to thrive now. And I think there is, like I've done really well with Leon, and, just getting a different message out there, I think is great. But I think we could have a little bit more awareness of things that are outside of the mainstream.
Yeah. My thing too is like, represent us strong, but also realize that there are other people out there.
Yeah.
Recognize that there are other cultures that also have representation too. And once we figure out each other's own strength, that's when we need to come together. But I feel like there's always this fight, this imbalancing scale that's trying to make instead of recognizing each other's power, there's like trying to, see who's more superior.
Right.
In a sense. And to me, that's where we're getting it wrong.
Right. That's where we need more work. we had a lot of work to do.
I keep saying we need I don't understand why don't we have a summit yet?
Because I don't know. I'll talk to you off camera.
Indeed. So my final question to you, and just kind of almost segueing off, where do you see the comic book industry, both mainstream and indie, going in the next few years?
That's scary.
I mean, is there any possible? Let me add on to that. Is there any possible way of seeing another boom period possibly coming?
I think I'm really interested in this new streaming war, which is going to be the big talk for probably the next 10 years, right?
I was going to say 10. I'm already tired of it now.
Streaming services.
I did the math a while ago. I'm tired of it now.
Yeah, I mean, just the war for eyeballs is going to be really big, And I think if comics are going to thrive, it may just be IP mining, right? It's just, we're going to just, go through the fields and just pick this corn and turn it into something else. And, as a creator, that sounds great. I've gotten a really weird arguments with people over, like I said it at one of the panels I was at Keystones. Yeah. I love comics. I love movies. I think if we can find a place where we stop worshiping and fetishizing moving pictures as the ultimate form of entertainment, then books will thrive. But when you have people come up to your table where you sell comic books and go, yo, when's a cartoon coming out?
Right.
Yo, they going to make a movie out of this?
Right.
It's like, but you have the book in your hand. Right? Like, if we could get past that, I think comics would be in a good place, but I can't guarantee that. I had the fear, maybe before this whole MCU stuff happened, that there could be a point where they don't really need to make comic books anymore when you have...
I'm really afraid of that.
Right? Because, like, what's the return on investment for... who owns DC now? Warner?
Warner, yes.
Time Warner, AOL Time Warner,
yes.
I don't know. It changes every 5 days. So, like
Warner
all of
Premiere or something like that now.
Yeah. Like all of those, like, services or Netflix or like Flash season 7.
Yeah.
Like, who needs a Flash comic book?
Right.
Right? If the only thing that's going to keep them alive is just to keep the intellectual property from expiring.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Here's my situation though, because this is a discussion I'm probably going to have later on in another podcast soon.
Yeah.
And that is basically, if you notice, let's take Marvel for instance. Every majority of their storylines that they use for the cinematic universe is based on the 90s popularity.
Yeah.
Only rare amounts of it. I think Civil War is the only modern recent story that they used that made any money for Marvel in the modern day. Everything else was the 90s. So once all those 90s situations get out of the way, they're going to have to farm some more ideas again.
Right.
They're going to have to get back into because once this, we're at the, no pun, we're literally at the end game of it all. So where are they getting their ideas from?
I see what you did there.
Where are we getting their ideas from? Because like I can't. It better not be from like Original Sin or anything, because that sucked. It better not be from like the one where all the hammer. Everybody had a Asgardian hammer. I forgot the name of it.
Right. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, that one. That was not a good story. Like, where are we getting our stories from now? So they're going to have to start really working hard to come up with better stories.
Well, I mean, you have a whole industry full of writers who know how to write that stuff. Hire them to write. Yeah. But I know that's a whole industry issue.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I was just reading something where somebody was talking about the fact that a comic strip writer can't write a screenplay, but they hire screenwriters to write comic books. J.J. Abrams' Spider-Man just came out this week.
Yeah, I actually read about that in an article and then what he did with that.
Right.
I'm interested in checking that out. Have you read it yet?
No, I mean, but I'm interested, but then I'm mad that I'm interested. Right? Because it's just like another writer who's getting pushed to the side.
Yeah, well, a writer because he's already an established guy.
Or even like Ta-Nehisi Coates writing Black Panther. No knock, I think that stuff's great. Yeah. But if we're like we're leapfrogging over people who do this for a living already.
Yeah. To
kind of celebrate celebrity.
That's corporate for you, man. I mean, you got to remember, they only care about money. That is. If anything that Sony has proven to us right now is that they are all about money and ego. And look, think about it. Just a couple years ago, CM Punk wrote a damn comic book for Marvel. Yeah.
Raven wrote one a long time ago, if you remember.
Yeah. I mean, there you go. I mean, like that's a if that's trendy, I don't know what is.
Yeah, I didn't read it though, but. I was a big CM Punk fan, but I didn't read his comic.
But I was like, okay, now he's just doing whatever.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I kind of take that if, you were this big celebrity, Hollywood, whatever, and someone was like, hey, do you want to do a passion project? You okay?
I mean, you would, I mean, honestly, if she was any other foot, you wouldn't pass it off.
Right, yeah, but I don't know if I'd buy it.
I don't expect him to be the next Kevin Smith or anything like that.
Who can be the next Kevin Smith?
Exactly. You know what I'm saying?
But I don't even know if I answered your original question about...
Well, no, you kind of did. It's like basically you said that, you're not really sure, but you're hoping, but it's really unsure. Yeah,
so, I mean, going back to my kids thing is we need to do a better job of making sure kids can get comic books. Mm-hmm. Right? Because, like, the more we focus on this Disney streaming or the next wave of Marvel movies and all other kind of stuff, what's even the point of going to a comic book store?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's on us,
And it's scaring me now because, I mean, you're from Philly, we don't have a green onion anymore. Fat Jacks is barely surviving. Are they still around?
Yeah, they're
so they did survive, thank goodness.
Yeah.
We got Amalgam. I mean, like...
And Brave New Worlds.
And Brave New World, of course, yeah.
And Atomic, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, we got all of them. Shout out to South Philly. And, South Street at that. But, it's just... I mean, believe it or not, Atomic Comics, forgot. I used to work in South Street when Pearl Arts and Craft was around.
Yeah, I used to steal out of it.
I used to be the supervisor.
Well, I'm stop lying. I steal out of Pearl, but
we had stories.
I'm sure.
Dude, I got plenty of stories I could really tell you about Pearl Arts and Craft. Like when the FBI comes to visit you every year, that's something right there. But
I believe you.
That was a very interesting time for me. But I love what South Street used to be.
Yeah.
And I'm glad to see at least that Atomic Comics is one of the last longest residing established businesses in that area, bar none. That's not a food place.
Yeah, when Zipperhead closed, I was like, yo.
Yeah. So I tell you, to the old age.
Yeah, cheers. I don't have anything to drink.
I'm there with you. I got a invisible goblet.
There you go. All right.
But what's next for you? What you got going on right now? Are you touring around? Are you heading around? What are you doing?
So on my table is I'm working on the next Leon book.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm working on a prequel book where I am trying to get it prepped to ship around to some of the New York publishers. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to land a publishing house for my next round of books. And then as far as conventions are concerned, October is going to be crazy. Yeah. I'm a guest at New York Comic Con.
Yeah, you almost would have saw me there too, but I got commitments, so I can't be there. But I am absolutely. I told him because they just contacted me today, believe it or not, about doing 2 panels there.
Oh,
and
cool.
I was like, oh, okay, that just told me how good I was. But
yeah, made an impression.
Yeah, I'm very honored by them even reaching out and giving me these opportunities. Trust me when I tell you, I've been working my ass off for years to get to this point. Yeah, no,
that's great, man.
But I got commitments that me and my wife are going to be doing throughout the whole entire October. But I absolutely am blocked for 2020. That's guaranteed.
So, right, that's what's up.
I will definitely see you there, and not only that, we will definitely keep in touch because I have had a great time. I, as a person who is an advocate of education, I applaud you for everything that you're doing out there.
Oh, thank you so much.
You are a true superhero, even without the ability to express it visually.
Oh, thank you.
In my opinion, and man, keep up the great work.
Thank you so much. Oh, I have a plug. I have one plug.
Oh, I was going to let you get in your plugs. Don't get that.
Oh, no. I thought you were going to cut me off. Don't cut
see
my
Chris
mic.
Out. No.
Yeah.
No, but absolutely. Go ahead and let us know where we can find you as well as what you got going on next.
Okay, so after New York Comic Con, then I will be. I keep messing this up. I have a bunch of shows. I will be at Baltimore Comic Con a little later in the month. I'm going to be at this new show called the Comic Con for Kids outside of Philly at the Greater Oaks Convention Center. Have you ever been to that
I have
spot?
Not.
It's a very odd place. It's kind of like the restaurant at the end of the universe place, but it's a really good venue, which is going to be a completely kids-centric comic book convention.
That's really cool.
And then I'll be back in New York at the end of the month for Diversity Con, which is going to be at FIT's campus in New York.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's that. But what I wanted to say real quick before we hung up is that I just started a Patreon last night. So I'm very excited about that, and I'm trying to get the word out.
Absolutely. I'm more than happy to spread it out as well. So just make sure you give me all your information. I'll have that spread out on our posts and everything when we got out there. So I got you.
I will. Thank you.
So now, Jamar, thank you so much. It's been an absolute honor to have you on. And again, thank you for all the work that you've been doing and trying to get that word out and inspiring, to youth because, starting from the jump with the kids is probably the best thing. And I wish I had. You're talking to somebody who we talked about, growing up at 16. I was that 16-year-old antagonizing other people. Yeah. And that led for me, getting kicked out of Brook, going into Cato, going to West Philly High, but get myself together and graduating on time at a Philadelphia Regional High, which was like the charter before charter. Yeah, no, I know about that. Yeah. It was at that point that I met a really great teacher called Fred Horton, and he has become one of my biggest inspirational people in my life. Yeah. And so much so that I have a ring on my class ring that's been on my finger from 1996 is still on my hand, and I'll never take it away. Just as a tribute to education and how important it is, as well it is the last thing my mother's ever given me before she passed. Yeah. And not only that, he became a groomsman in my wedding. Wow. That's how amazing. That's how much I valued him. He's been an inspiration in my life, and I want to see more like him, especially in our community. It's great to see that we got another one out there. Wow. Thank you so much, man. It means a lot. And, I think we all have the power to do the same stuff, right? And it could start with even if, say, you're a big fan of just like gritty, stubble-chinned comic books. Right. Pick up a copy of Leon and give it to a kid. You don't have to keep it. You know what I mean? I'm sure everybody's got a cousin or a kid on their block that could use something good to read. There's also a lot of places that donate books and everything like that. So, I will actually, in fact, I'll guarantee you, I'll do that myself. Oh, cool. Look at that. Let's we walk the walk. Right? The hell, I'm actually going to buy a copy of my own and then give the other away. I'm doing it old school. It's like you keep the one and then you package, you bag the other one. You got to put that on ice and then we keep that one on the coffee table. Exactly. You know how many doubles of books I got right now? That's the wrap, man. But also, I'm definitely going to look out. Jamar, thank you so much again. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate it. No problem. If you need anything else, let me know, all right? You got it. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed this very special episode of Talk Time Live Exclusive. On behalf of myself and the one and only Jamar Nicholas, all I got to say is learn to let go, live life, and love all things anime, comics, movies, and games. This is A.C.M.G. presents Talk Time Live. We are out of here. Take care. This episode of A.C.M.G. Presents Talk Time Live is brought to you in part by Viewfinder's Identity Search and Design. Your choice for web design, graphic design, and all multimedia development needs. Visit VFISAD.com and let us bring your vision to reality.